My name isn't actually Frank. My real name is Beniamino, but I've been known as Frank ever since I was born. It was a long story with one of my uncles, my father's brother in America, that his name was Frank, and he was adamant that I'd be called Frank. Nobody liked him, so they didn't register me as Frank, but they still kept calling me a Frank. Up to today, if I sign a document, I got to sign Benjamin. But everybody knows me as Frank. Actually, as Frank Mezzapica, when I'm Beniamino Portelli. Okay? So, but anyway. It all started in 1951 when two of my brothers left the island, Lipari Island, to migrate to Australia to find a better future for themselves. Then a sister joined them. Then another brother joined them. And in 1963, my parents, my two sisters, and I joined them to close the circle. That was 1963. In 1964, I started my apprentice job at Mezzapica from my uncle, which was the original owner and the one that opened up the first Italian cake shop in Sydney. He had guts because he came here in 51. In 51, he opened one in Strathfield, and after 6 months he had to close it because there was not many Italians. And then he met this real estate agent, Castiglione his name was. They lived here in Leichhardt, and told him about this place in Norton Street. It's a small shop. It was a small shop. Then my uncle built the factory at the back. And it all started from there. We never looked back. Then the mass immigration started from Italy in the 60s. Shiploads of migrants. We were in one of them, on the Galileo Galilei. And so I started my apprenticeship with him in 1964. Eventually, he retired, so I ran the place for him, and then I actually bought her off him. And 53 years later, I'm still here.
And were you a family of bakers in Italy?
My uncle, the one that came here, and another uncle in the island, they were both pastry cooks. Mm. So it was in my mother's genes, not in the Portelli genes.
And how was having continental cakes in the 50s and 60s? What did other Australians, non-Italian Australians, think about the kind of cakes your family were making?
Well, at the time, like today, you go in a cake shop and you just got 20, 30 different cakes to choose from. Back then, it was only the continental or nothing. That's it. There was no mud cake and no cheesecake. And that's still our number one cake. 70 years later, it's still Mezzapica's number one cake. That and the cannoli. If we could put the cannoli one next to the other that we've done in the last 70 years, we would have gone around the world quite a few times.
That's a lot of cannoli.
That's a lot of cannoli.
What's your favourite cannoli? Cannolo.
Ricotta. Always ricotta.
Yes. And do you think that Australians' taste buds have changed in that time?
They have. They not just Australians. Before Mezzapica was just an Italian community. Now, you can say that there's people coming from all over the world that live in Sydney that have tried. Eventually, in 70 years, they must have tried them somewhere, something. So it became more like a multicultural cake shop. And that's why we also had to diversify in just the continental. Because some people ask for different things, and you gotta try to accommodate them.
So how old were you when you got on that boat with your parents and your sisters?
I turned 14 a week after I got here.
And what was that like coming to a country that I'm guessing you didn't know much about at all?
I was so disappointed on the Harbour Bridge when the ship sailed through, because of all the photos that my brothers have been sending back and all that. I expected to be much bigger. And when I thought, oh, was that it? That's what I thought.
So your brothers had come here and already created some kind of life for themselves before the rest of you came over.
Yeah.
So what was that reunion with everybody like, to see your brothers again?
Well, I didn't know my first two brothers because I was born in 49 and they left in 51. So I didn't know the first two brothers. I knew the other sister that she's still alive today and she's 90. She lives at Glenora, 90 years old she is. I knew all the other ones, but the first two I didn't know them. And it was good because you could see that, especially my mother. My mother, she was so happy to see everybody around the table when we used to get together. Obviously, we're a big family with seven children plus wives and grandsons and all that.
So what are the main changes you've seen to this area since your time here as a teenager?
Leichhardt has become a lot multicultural, a lot. Shops, residents, it's become a lot. In the 70s, in the 70s, 60s, 70s, used to close the shop on Saturday at 1 o'clock. And if you ran naked on Norton Street at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, nobody would see you.
Where was everyone?
No one around, because all the shops closed at 12 o'clock and no one around.
Now I guess the expectation is that you're open all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, because, as I said, things change and you got to adapt to the times.
So you were born in a house overlooking the water in Italy.
In air, it would have been like 20 meters off the sea, because there was the beach, the road where all the green is, and then there's the house on top.
Have you had the chance to visit that house since you came here?
Yeah, we sold it when we came to Australia. It was my grandfather's house. And there was, my father had 7 brothers. To sell that house, between proxies from America, proxies from Australia, anyway, sold it to one of my cousins. He spent a few dollars on it, a few euros on it, and it really looks nice now. And I went there, whenever I go there to eat. He invites me to eat.
So did you used to have to collect the water from a well?
Yeah, no, it was inside. It was inside the house. There was, underneath the house was a big room that was collecting the water from the rain.
Right. And was it difficult to make friends when you came here when you were a teenager?
It wasn't difficult. Well, not really. I remember my first day at De La Salle, at Edgefield. Because coming from a place where the school finished at 1 o'clock, we had a little lunch at 10 o'clock here, then you had big lunch at 12 o'clock. When it was 12 o'clock, I packed my things. In my room, there were 5 Italians. They could speak Italian, but they were here. I don't know whether they were born here or came very small. And one of them was a detective. He became a detective called Bruno Cortiana. And he goes to me, Benjamin, because they knew me as Benjamin. Where are you going? I said, I'm going home. He goes, he hasn't finished yet. I said, what do you mean he hasn't finished yet? No, he goes, then we're going to go back to class. I said, I'm going home. I took my things, started to walk from De La Salle. I got onto Palmyra Road, and then I lost track where I was to go. My brother gave me a piece of paper with an address. He said, if you ever get lost, stop a taxi, show him the address, and they'll bring you home. And which I did. I was only, imagine that it cost me 2.6 shillings from Palmyra Road to the Leozi Street at where San Genovakis is. That's where I used to live. I was just 300 meters away, but I couldn't work out where I was. But overall, then, my biggest concern was to go to school every day, couldn't speak English, sit in a place. I tried to study that there was a book called L'inglese in 3 mesi, in 3 months, which my English all came when I started here, and he sent me to TAFE at the Technical College at Darlinghurst. That's where I went to do my apprenticeship for pastry cooking. And I surprised myself that the first year I used to borrow the book from one of my friends there to copy the recipes or what the teacher was saying. And the second year it just came on natural. Just natural. So much so that the school, at the end of the second year, they presented me with the most improved student in stage 2, with a $10 shopping brochure for Johnson & Johnson's overalls in George Street. That with those $10 in those days, I bought 6 aprons and a saw knife.
A saw knife. Well, that's a good collection of things to get for nothing, though, just for having a good brain.
Yeah, but just the most improved student in stage 2. And even though after I finished stage 3, a few years later, they knew that I was here, and they rang me if I want to take part in the school, in the TAFE as a teacher. I said, look, he said that they paid well, because being government run, they paid well. It was only once a week. But I said, I can't leave my uncle there once a week, and I never had that thing to be like a boss of someone. I always like to be a team worker. That's why I got people downstairs that have been with me for 20 years. Because we get along very well, and we're all here to do a job, and we just do it. But it was good. The TAFE was good. I still remember the teacher, the decorator teacher. He was working as a cake decorator at 5 Dock at the end of Ramsey Road, at the lights in Great North Road. There was a shop there called Ison's Cakes. He used to work there. And he would give me a lift down because I lived 100 meters further down. He used to give me a lift when I went to TAFE, when he finished it, to go home. Mr. Folk, his name was. It's amazing how you remember some things. We're not talking about yesterday. We're talking about 55 years ago.
Mm. And what's the proudest achievement that you can remember since you arrived in Australia? What's the thing you're proudest of that either you or your family have achieved?
My proudest moment was when my uncle told me that I was the next Mezzapika, that I was to take over this shop. That was my proudest moment, because I had a sister in Messina, a auntie in Messina, which was a sister to my uncle here. And when he went to Messina in 1973, he said to his sister, the cake shop is going to be Frank's cake shop, because he's a young, capable man to run it. And I started to run this place when I was 23 for him, that he retired. That was my proudest moment. Then all the others is when I look now at these photos and I see this one here with this young girl and the other one with the two boys. That's what grandparents are for.